Hello there, Stevie Mantano here, the internet's busiest quarantiner. And today we're talking about Zutomayo, a Japanese band that's gained quite a bit of attention lately from one of their music videos, an animated music video that's really been hidden off internationally. And it isn't the first time for the band, as about 2 years ago their first music video really hit it big, about 50 million views big, let's say. Now music videos have become a staple of the band's output, for their mystique. See, they're the kind of band that doesn't do interviews, they don't really talk much about what they're doing, and at this current point they've released 10 music videos, including the one that I'm eventually going to talk about today, Study Me. But before we can do that, we probably should study all the rest of them. You see, when their LP came out originally, it got into that top spot on the Hot 100 in Japan, on the Omnicron and all that. So the band's been doing pretty well, especially in the video universe. They've gained a majority of their attention online from their music videos, so I think that's safe to say, especially on YouTube in comparison to things like Spotify. Not just that, I believe there is something more to this than just music videos. I have a feeling that most of these music videos seem to paint a bigger picture of what the band's about. So I'm going to look through all 10 of them before we get to the, the one we all want to see today. Bite the Second Hand. Am I to blame? There's regret, there's leaving now. I think some of these songs definitely come from a place of, is this a relationship with someone? And if you look at these sort of imagery used in this thing, you've got references to Klimt, especially that famous painting with the male character objectifying down on the woman. I think that sort of relates to relationship, or they sort of want to escape from by the sounds of it. There's a menacing figure, or multiple menacing figures, that are referenced throughout. You have this sort of lonely air. It's like mainly a story of around one protagonist. And you'll see that a lot coming up here. They brought in sort of a Vocaloid animator extraordinaire to do this music video, who already had some popularity from doing things like Hatsune Miku videos. Their name is Wabaku. And I think their animation is sort of more like web gen. It's intimate, it feels like a smaller project by a couple people instead of like a big affair. And it definitely has a sort of strong color palette. There's a handcrafted ability to it. We sort of see this a reference to like a clockwork heart in a cage. It's almost like referencing this sort of bird in a cage mentality with the main character. It feels a bit like a pop-up book in a lot of ways. I see the appeal. Like, this is my favorite shot right here. And of course the sad pianos and the J-rock staples are all over the place. There's massive guitars, there's drum fills and bass. The band has kind of like a simple output in style in some ways, but they definitely know how to hit it off the right way. Especially when it comes to Akane, the singer here, and her like beltingly sharp voice. I've even heard that this song, especially the animation, is what got them the record deal that they've been doing pretty well off so far. And if that's the case, then kudos. You start to see them coming back 4 months later, and that also includes Wabuku. Now we start to sort of notice what things become more staples within the band's career here. There's a hedgehog that's in every video, another girl protagonist. This one's very similar. The colours of the hair have been flipped. There's a lonely atmosphere here. It has this sort of hand-drawn quality to it again. There's rain, there's mysterious figures, but this time there's an umbrella, so there's something a bit more hopeful, perhaps representing how the band feel. Just coming off something that was so successful. The style's also expanded this time. We see things like stop motion and these puppet dioramas, and it's a little bit bigger, even though it's still an indie production. There's a bit more wide accompaniment of equipment and tools. This one seems to be more specified into sort of an age, like it talks about notifications, this ideal side, an aspiration to get towards. Is what's happening fine? I think there's still a relationship element here. It almost feels a bit more long distance about like, is this working? Is it not? Is it done? Maybe there's something sort of reminiscing of it, something they're trying to hold on to. The band themselves very much like to play with the framing of the scene. They don't always want to use the whole widescreen. There are definitely parts where they want to crop it, if it be through a Polaroid or a frame of a painting, something to encapsulate it, to feel almost imprisoned. Now, I'm going to make a bit of a bold jump here. I didn't originally want to go through these like as they were released, but I want to talk about Wabuku's final video with the band in terms of big music videos. because this one sort of helps convey the story a bit more. It becomes a bit more transparent about stuff that was going to be relating later on. First we see a character unsip, and then it's a new person. And the character looks to be like someone from one of the prior music videos that he did. There might be a connection between all the sort of musical protagonists here. They might be one and the same, but we'll get more towards that as we go. So she sheds and becomes this sort of future idol, almost like a Space Channel 5, Space Dandy looking thing. There's a lot more technique going on here, and I suppose it's because we're a lot later in the production cycle, right? We see some 3D angle comps and stuff like that, some 3D layers, CGI, and very much this time it feels like the end of the world. We're into this sort of sci-fi conclusion. The world that we once were in is completely collapsed. Anything about it is gone. There's still faceless figures though. The figures of facelessness have still remained. There's a lot more settings and scenes this time. We're seeing a lot more going on. It's explosive and action-packed. And I think the emotional rawness of it, because it's somewhat of a sort of final era in this breakup style song. If these all were breakup sort of things, this is the end of that. We also see that broken clock there, which I suppose if that clock had anything to do with the relationship, those feelings are like long gone. They're buried under the sea. Now we're taking a left turn here to go to the third music video, which was made by someone called Sakiyama. Sakiyama is also a Vocaloid animator from the past. Very crisp style. We're going to sort of a neon cyberpunk world, flashing screens, it's crisp, high contrast with the pop colors. Feels like a different style here. We're getting into something which is a bit more anxiety-based, maybe a bit more internal battle. We see these two figures, hands that hold you back, to be like a battle that's internal about leaving your house or going out in the world. There are parts here which sort of invoke a first-person shooter, which that sort of escapism, like this idea of being in this locked room where you're just trying to escape from the world within that bubble because you don't want to deal with the outside situation. But ultimately, they win out. They sort of become in the real world. And perhaps that's even more referenced on the next music video, because Sakiyama also did this one. It's called Radiant DNA. There's something about solitude and comfort here, and the same sort of feeling. I think a lot of the music videos here have a very lonely atmosphere. This one definitely seems to be the same girl, and they drop that in here. Like the references you see from the other video are pretty much confirmed through the skip rope. All the prior versions of this girl all show flash before us, so this seems to be concluding they're all one and the same. Here especially, this starts to reference the prior music video, which I don't think we've quite seen in such an obvious way before. They go back to the shooting gallery area and to the room from the prior movie. There's also this new sort of faceless monster figure with the Raven character here. Seems to be more ambiguous about where they stand. It seems like they perhaps may be more on the side of the young lady than otherwise. It's definitely a dour track as well. It's a bit more down-tempo, but towards the end we kind of get this feeling of the comfort that's holding you back, losing yourself in harmlessness. There is sort of a frustration with that, like letting your emotions go with it and sort of lashing out in that way against that sort of precedent. There's a frustration building here. So now we're back to like a completely different animator. Sort of soft, loose, limited palette. I call it quite intimate again. It holds the same kind of motifs with creatures and solitude, something about a kind of relationship, and there's also similar motifs. The hedgehog returns. It sort of starts bringing out stuff about anxiety. And there's a sort of powerful chorus to it. Distance of the relationship they're talking about, one that they can't really get back to, having to say goodbye, these other monstrous figures, which I again think that some may be related to you as a person, like another self, another version of yourself. And that's followed through on Kick Away the Blanket, which is again the same animator. You got morph cuts with the animation, the sort of abstract cuts that are used to great effect. A lot of these music videos, they seem to be more definitely about having a feeling than they are necessarily about telling a completely cohesive story that you can get. Just like the mystique of the band, the mystique of these videos make people want to sort of pry into them and try and like decipher what's going on and how they all may be connected. They keep intendingly putting these references in, I'm sure, for the fans. And there's definitely where you start to see like that feeling of nostalgia. There's a nostalgia running through here if it be for things like stamps or frames and paintings and Polaroids and VHS tape. Even though the band themselves are quite young, I think they're using these as more tangible feelings of a different past. And same with like the instrumentation here, it swirls around. They're really good in the band with hooks, getting you to sort of relate to the situation here. This time, again, it's a similar kind of color palette, a similar kind of animation, but they're using these sort of blurring of the side of the frames to bring attention to stuff. It is sparse, but then the fullness sort of just erupts out of nowhere. There are two predominantly animators that I've worked in the series, with Sakiyama coming back with such a distance. Now this one, I think is actually a complete change in some parts. Like there are definitely more people here. They're going outside this character that we've seen before that wasn't. So maybe there's a recovering element to it. But there's also a fantasy setting that comes out of nowhere, falling back into this sort of fantasy to try and get away from more like social element of the world. It's an action set piece. There is the Raven character returning. He returns with the album EP cover to try and help the Hedgehog, and the Hedgehog becomes an important character in this one. In the past, the Hedgehog's really just been a comedic foil for a lot of this, just to sort of take off the edge of how sort of at times dark they can be, these videos. But yeah, it's like a battle coliseum going on here, and the Hedgehog has to save the main protagonist here. She cries. It's sad. There's no like nice conclusion to it at all. But I'd say the drums in the song have a real strength to them because it is definitely the sort of action set piece song that we've had so far. And at the end, it almost comes a little bit more full circle to the point we're going to see in the Study Me single, because they reference the space sort of stations, because the next video would have been the one we covered before, Wabuku's A Space Piece. So they seem to be alluding to the more connections between the worlds and dimensions of these characters. That is not just the director that's the same, like these aren't just references to one director, but actually to the whole series. I mean, each of the protagonists you can see right here on the screen there. My friend Beth did these little drawings to sort of associate that they're all one and the same, to sort of illustrate this. Right, and then this one I think is actually the most outwards from the start because it's a completely different animator and it has quite a painterly children's book tone. It's very gloomy, sort of a two-tone palette, and it's quite a consistent story, and I think it sort of brings into this idea of like the dimensions. Even if there is some abstractness to it, it is a consistent sort of Romeo and Juliet style story. And the power of Akane's voice is something that cuts through a lot of the atmosphere here. It's a piano ballad kind of power pop feeling. We even get a little reference to the Hedgehog there. It's a song of loss, of different worlds, of staying apart from each other, and of ultimately self-sacrifice for another. In this case, a sort of angel figure. Yeah, I think this is actually one of the better music videos. I actually really like this. Definitely showing the band pushing towards a more straightforward story that perhaps you don't need to be as invested in like the world of the others to kind of get. But I still think there is enough there to sort of reference it and connect it to those worlds, especially with the revelations we see in Study Me. Now this is the big boy, right? Before it was mostly a Vocaloid animators, Vocaloid producers doing the music here. But this time we've got two animators, mostly from like an anime background. One that's worked in a lot of the big studios and another one that has worked on projects themselves, seems an up-and-comer. But yeah, this one has really blew me away. This is the first I saw. It has a video focusing on a character living multiple lives and how they feel like they are forced into the background of it, almost through like an interdimensional style, like pushing against destiny, which wants them to stay in line. Like a groundhog premise, distortion of older media comes back. We have the constraint of the 4x3 with these OVA sort of settings, but there's also enough little cute references in there to things like Digimon and Dragon Quest, Pokemon, Undertale. It's just a bit of fun for the fans. A little color distortion. I think it's incredibly vibrant. It's almost like a staggering animation. It's so impressive at how dynamic it looks, as well as you can see a lot of the denseness of the compositing here. Behind the scenes, we can see them using 3D and 2D coming together. There's more animators referenced on this one, a lot more people helping, I suppose. Even though I still think it's a relatively small production, but it feels like something big, something very impressive. Now, right here, this is the point I think it really just puts it all together. Like, there is a reference at about this sort of point of the song where we see an outfit from the 8th music video. And I think that kind of brings the connection full forward, because I see this one's almost like uncovering what people have started to notice, that this character seems to be living out the same life or a different life in different dimensions and different situations. I guess it keeps repeating or keeps going on, and it all seems to be about being trapped, if it be by a relationship or a longing of a relationship in the past, but also by just sort of trapped in this bubble that they can't get out of. And this is the video where it's like, no, we are removing ourselves from that. We are that, and we are breaking through the fourth wall. Later on, when there's sort of like the TV and it's closed off, you see little references to things like, they mentioned the word DNA in the background, there are street lights. These are just little motifs that continue throughout, as well as just some absurdism and really impressive Sokugo cuts. Since by the end of it, she makes it to the other side, and I'm really looking forward to where they go from there. But if we were to really break down the song, like in terms of the musical like qualities of it, I think that they're generally are quite a consistent band in style. But this one definitely focuses more on the sort of bass line, and you could say there's a fusion element towards its J-pop. Of this big band, I mean, they have strings. It's pretty epic with its guitar breakdown, sort of the instrumental playness. It's all very tight, and again, it's almost like they're all playing off like how strong the voiceover is. You know. It's like a live backing band, and if you've ever seen them live, yeah, I think the live pictures sort of paint that like they are pretty much one-to-one. So at times the spacing on the track especially, it can be quite small at times, and then it builds up into this sort of breaking wave that smashes down on you. And the animation, I think, really brings out the peaks and valleys of that, just by emphasizing the parts that it needs to in the strongest moments. Whew. That was a lot, guys. Whew. Gee whiz. Now I'm still wondering, like, who particularly could this character be? Is it anyone is it sort of a reference to something in particular to the band? And the more I looked, the more I could see. If we just enhance, if we just zoom in, we just keep zooming in there. Keep zooming in. That's Akane, right? She's the main singer in the band, and like the only major named figure that we know is in every one of these videos. The rest of the band, it seems more ambiguous if they're the same or not. I imagine by the sound of it they are, but you never quite know. But what you'll see there is it seems that she is the girl in the videos. They seem to all reference her, and I wouldn't be surprised considering this character seems to be singing her songs and is always relating, and how they all seem to connect, and perhaps that this is some sort of animated version for her to express her personal like stories and musical identity through. You know, I didn't expect to fall into such a rabbit hole of all these musical identities and songs, but I quite enjoyed it. Call me a fan at this point. I'll definitely say that. And one of the most like endearing things to me, it's definitely that lively young energy they have. In fact, I was taken aback when I watched the live footage of the band at YouTube, and just seeing that like Akane didn't know how to use a VHS player. It was definitely endearing, but it gave me the idea that she's probably 10 years younger than me, which is making me feel that mortality. I'll say that much. But yeah, I am definitely looking forward to the future of the band and what's coming next. It seems like they've got the new album coming out in August, a little EP, so I imagine we may even get another music video before then, and I'm looking forward to how they evolve this story and their style. I'm going to say if you'd like me to cover a musical band or talent from Japan, you can reference it in the comments, and the one that gets the most upvotes will be put on the list of my maybe future videos on topics like this. Generally, these videos are here to sort of supplant my longer projects, give me something to do, which is a bit more casual and fun, just talking to stuff and having a bit of fun with everyone. But if you really want me to cover something, you can always use my Patreon to request a musical piece or an artist. And referencing that there, yeah, it's a cool thing to do. And I should probably thank the rest of my patrons, including Daniel Strait, Alex Moriarty, and Joven, and the rest over here, for making this project possible as we go through these trying times. And finally, let's talk about the song of the day, which of course has to be Study Me. But if you're looking for something else, I do think their live performance, I believe they call themselves Midnight Forever in English, the Midnight Forever live performance definitely shows some pretty fascinating stuff there. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I'll see you next time.